Oh, hey, is proposal writing something you kind of dread? Do you find yourself just staring at a blank page for a while, not quite sure what to write? Or do you feel like maybe there's a better way and you're not quite sure how you should be doing it? Well, stick around because today I'm going to give you a few tips on how you can write a killer proposal and land that big job. You're listening to Hassle-Free Websites, and I'm your particularly ugly host, Justin Meadows. If you want to learn more about making selling websites easier and more profitable for your business, then stick around, because you're in the right place. Make sure you hit subscribe below as well, so you don't miss out on future episodes. So first up, the big trap to avoid when writing a proposal is getting stuck into the nitty-gritty technical details. That's not something you need to write about in the proposal especially. The proposal should really only cover the broad strokes when it comes to deliverables. So what you want to drill into is the problem and the fact that you will solve it. The technical parts can be covered in a more detailed brief which comes after they've paid their deposit, and you should include the cost of creating that brief in the overall costs of the project. Next up, we should cover what makes a great proposal. To create an effective proposal, you first need to take the time to understand the client and what they really need. Make sure you do this before you even start thinking about what to write and what to charge them. To do this, you need to ask the right sort of questions. Think of yourself as a doctor. First, you need to ask them what they think is the problem. But then you should also ask other questions and probe deeper into further areas to make sure you understand the full picture and where their real pain is. Once you've done that, you can accurately prescribe an appropriate solution. And the client will be more comfortable knowing that you have taken the time to understand what they really need. For bonus points, you can record this interview so that you can play it back to yourself later while you're writing the proposal. It really helps out. A great framework for this kind of selling is called Spin Selling by Neil Rackham. Check out the book. So SPIN stands for the current situation the client is in, the problem with their current situation, and then the implication of these problems on the long term of their business, and then the solution that they need to solve the problem. A great way to think about it is not just that you're selling them a website, but you're providing a solution to their problem. You're helping them move from their current situation into a better situation. Now, let's use some action tips that you can implement right now in your business. What I'm going to do is go through all of the sections that you should include in your proposal to make it effective. First up, we have the overview, and you want to quickly just skim over the current situation and the problems that they face and the implications of those problems, just to remind the client why this is so important to them. And then you can describe in broad terms what solution you're offering. A big tip for the overview is use the same language that the client used when talking to you. Indeed, do that for the entire brief. But in the overview is especially important. The overview is one of the most read sections of a proposal. They might not read the whole thing, but they'll read the overview and the price. So make sure your overview really speaks directly to them in their language and reiterates the problems that you discussed with them. Next up is the process. So you go through the workflow of how this is going to happen, what you're going to do, what they're going to do, if there's any other third parties, that sort of thing. And just explain so that they know what to expect. The process is a great opportunity to show them how you need them to work with you and what you expect from them. Next, you want to go through the broad timeline for each step in the process. So you want to cover just how long to expect each thing to take. Don't necessarily stick to hard deadlines at this point, because if something's delayed at the start, then obviously the project will get pushed. The brief is really where you should put more solid timelines. So just explain to the client that this step will take 2 weeks, this step will take 3 weeks, this step will take 4 weeks, and perhaps explain that if any of these are delayed, then it's going to push back the whole project. So next we talk about the overall scope of the project. But again, we're talking in broad strokes. You want to just cover the chunks of what they will be getting and how that will benefit them. It's always good to balance up your features with the benefits that they provide to the client. And make sure you avoid talking in technical jargon. Throughout the brief, make it as easy as possible for them to understand. Next up is a general sort of features and benefits section. I usually include this as a sort of templated thing that I might just, add or remove a few of the features or benefits depending on the project. But overall, most of them are things that I include in my service every single time. Once again, it's important here to match up each feature with a benefit and to speak in plain English, not in technical jargon. So you might have this template section and you just go through it and read and edit it to make sure it's applicable to this particular client. Next up is to have some case studies, and these are things that are great when you're starting out to try and get, because it helps you sell later on. And as much as possible, just try and choose case studies, collect up a few, so then you can choose ones that are most appropriate to this client. It's also good to have an FAQ section so that you can cover off a few questions and make sure that they understand the sort of terms and conditions of working with you and what they can expect. Next up is the investment or price section. And this is, again, one of the most important parts of the brief, because quite often clients will simply skip to the price and just read that section. So it can be a really good idea to just quickly reiterate the situation and the problem that they have and what the solution is that you're offering. Next, you want to make sure that it's very clear and directly underneath that what it is that they need to do next to get started. You also want to make sure that that next step to get started is as easy as possible for them to do. Next, you want to cover off your payment and delivery terms and the legal conditions of your proposal. But make sure you also keep this succinct and easy to read. If you make this part too hard to read, there's a chance that you might delay the agreement because they'll need to take the time to read through it properly. Now that you've got all those bits together, you create a template so that you don't have to write this whole thing out every single time, but you can just come back to it and edit the template to be relevant to the client that you're working with. Some great places to go to check out some awesome website selling templates is betterproposals.io and WP Elevation. They both have some great free templates that you can check out. So today we covered off the fact that the proposal is a first step before you make the sale and before you write the brief. We covered off that you need to make sure you ask the right questions and dive deep into what the client really needs before you start writing the proposal. And we went through some of the chunks that you should be including in your proposal and how you should be dealing with those. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. And make sure you check out the next episode, because we're going to dive into how to best set some rules and boundaries for dealing with your clients to avoid a project turning into a disaster. In other news, a man was admitted at hospital today with 8 plastic horses in his stomach. His condition is now stable. Ireland is said to have the fastest growing capital city in the world because it's Dublin every year. NASA have started building a restaurant on Mars. They say the food will be amazing, but they're a little concerned about the lack of atmosphere.